Okay, so for this exercise prescription assignment, based off of the case given, I think it would be important to work on range of motion in the knee and in the ankle specifically. So we would do that by stretching, but also it would be important to really work on posture. It looks like he has, or our patient has, some forward flex position based off of their occiput to wall test. And I feel like if we kind of attack those two components, we could further lower their risk of falls, considering they've had a few in the past. And so for stretching of the knee, I would have the patient lay prone on a bench with their bottom, with the lower half of their leg hanging off, so from the knee down, hanging off the bench. And I would just let gravity kind of take their leg into a stretch position. We can progress that by adding like a 2 to 3 pound weight to the ankle to further bring it into a stretching position. And if we wanted to regress that, if that was too much for the patient, we can have them lay supine, and we would do like a partner stretch with the therapist. And so the patient would just have their leg placed on the therapist's shoulder, and the therapist would push them into a hamstring stretch until the patient said it was a good stretch. And we would hold, and for all three of those, we would probably hold those for 45 seconds, 3 sets. Going down to the ankle to work on dorsiflexion, because that's pretty key in getting some toe clearing, and try to work on that so he doesn't trip over his own feet. We could do some PNF stretching for his ankle into dorsiflexion. So the therapist would stretch the patient into dorsiflexion for 10 seconds. And then after those 10 seconds, the patient would push against the therapist's stretch for 10 seconds. And then after that, the patient would relax, and we would stretch them further into dorsiflexion for another 10 seconds, so a total of 30 seconds. We can progress that by having the patient stand up and actually stand on a slant board, and have the patient lean into the slant board into further dorsiflexion. We would probably do that for 3 sets of 15. To regress all of that, we would probably just have the patient sitting on a bench in long sitting with both their legs straight out, and have a strap or a towel around the foot, and just have the patient pull themselves into a stretch until the stretch feels adequate for them. For posture, we could do cervical retraction. And so I would just have the patient sit straight up and instruct them on not tucking their chin, but pulling their chin back. And so we would probably do that for 3 sets of 15 with a 2 to 3 second hold each time you go into retraction. And that can work on the endurance component of staying in that retracted position, as well as strengthening it to stay in that retracted position. We could progress that by having the patient lay prone on a bench again, but instead their head would be hanging off the bench, and we could do the same cervical retraction motion with the same parameters, 3 sets of 15, 2 to 3 second hold. And to kind of regress all of that again, we can have the patient sit, perform the same motion, but have it assisted, so they assist themselves into cervical retraction. And again, 3 sets of 15, 2 to 3 second hold. And finally, for posture, we can work on scapular retraction, pull those shoulders back. And so one way we could do that is have the patient lay prone on a bench, but have one of their arms hanging off the bench. And for 3 sets of 15, 2 to 3 second holds at the end of each scapular retraction, we just have the patient pull their arm or their shoulders back and try to bring their shoulder blade as close to the midline as possible. And we would do that on each side. So that's a unilateral exercise. To progress that, we could have them seating and doing scapular retractions with a band. And again, 3 sets of 15, 2 to 3 second holds, trying to work on that endurance and that strengthening component. And then to regress all that, we can just have the patient sitting with no band at all, and they would just pull their shoulders back. And so they're not having to fight against a resistance band, but they're also not having to fight as much against gravity. And so those would just be the things that I would do for this patient.